Hello and welcome to the GrapeSEED official podcast. We have another greatest hits episode for you today, and our guest is Matthew Green, who you have heard quite a bit on the Teacher Says series. Welcome to the show, Matthew.
Hi, Adam. Nice to be here again.
Welcome back. We have a slight twist on the format today. We typically select components from the lower units as most GrapeSEED teachers teach them. But since Matthew is at a school that teaches units 1 to 40, he has chosen an upper unit component to talk about as one of our standard 3. Let's start first, though, with your other pick, Unit 9's Which One? Why'd you pick this one, Matthew?
So I think Which One is kind of unique in terms of GrapeSEED stories. And what it does to make it stand out to me is that it asks questions in the middle of the material. It's the same question over and over again, like, is there something in the room with me? Which one do I see? So it's that same question that you're asking the kids again and again, but it's kind of unique in that sense because not really any other material that I can immediately think of in GrapeSEED actually does that. And I think there's a lot to love about this material. There's a huge amount of vocabulary words that they're picking up from it. And I like all the learning objectives with it as well. And just being able to ask, like, which one, I think is a very practical and useful phrase for the students to be learning at this stage.
Yes, I'm very glad that you chose this one because I think that shift in just structure of the story makes this one, it kind of tends to be one of the less popular components in Unit 9. I've seen a lot of teachers, they don't really know how to interact with this, so they struggle a bit. So I'm glad we're talking about it here.
Yeah, I think it's actually fantastic material, and it's always been one of my favorites to teach in Unit 9. It's got kind of like a Where's Wally kind of, or Waldo if you're
American.
If you're American, right? That kind of feel to it in a sense. Like they're looking through the pictures in the materials to sort of see like, oh, is that one there or that one there? And of course, as they get more advanced with the material, you can switch it up a bit and ask for like stuff that they haven't seen yet in the material. So I've always really enjoyed that part of it. It's just fun to teach.
Yeah, because you can find in most of the questions in that component, you can find the target object in the picture. And then at the very last question where it's who do I see or which one of you do I see? And it's the girl at the door. You actually have to kind of use logic a little bit and figure out which of the kids it is based off of the hair color and stuff. So it's a little different, but yeah, it's definitely, I can see how it's really fun for the kids to kind of process of eliminate on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's great, right? Like at the end of it, it's got that slightly different question, like which one of you do I see? And then by the end of the unit, I've got my kids saying like, oh, I see the girl or you see the girl, right? Like, so yeah, I think it's fantastic. In Unit 9, there's 50 vocab picture cards. And this actually uses 27, like more than half of those picture cards for this material. And I think it's really interesting and important to note that, like, we're not going into this material just thinking about, like, oh, like, it's just to teach all these vocab words. Nouns and verbs and all that kind of thing are actually really easy for kids to pick up through the vocabulary picture cards. And it's like almost within the first lesson or two, they're already kind of like drawing connections between those pictures in the materials cards and the ones they've seen on the flashcards and are able to like answer like, oh, I've seen this one and this one in there. So yeah, like it's a really quickly evolving material. And I think that's really down to how you use it. And if you follow the lesson plans, it actually has a really nice progression of abstraction over time in terms of how you use it, right?
Yeah.
So very much first off, you're just asking literally like, which one in the picture do you see, right? But as the material progresses, you start to ask questions about like things that might be in the room around you, or further on, maybe things that are outside, or like in your kitchen in your house, which one do you see, right? Like you can start to get them thinking further outside of the confines of just like what's in the immediate space around them. But of course, like progress through the material gradually, right? Like don't just jump into that sort of stuff at the start.
Absolutely. All those things that you're saying, they're reflected both in the quick checks and, like you mentioned, the day-to-day lesson plan. So if we look at the quick checks here, early and middle exposures, it's really focusing on that main sentence structure. Which one do I see? So early exposures are students beginning to understand the question. Middle exposures, do students understand the question? But when we get to the end exposures, it's not talking about that anymore because students have already picked it up. They've had a lot of practice with it. We can move on to some other targets. So end exposure is actually, can students express an opinion about what they see? What do you see in the classroom? I see a chair, a desk, and some markers. Then follow up, which one is your favorite? So we can expect them by the middle exposures to have down this expression, how to use it, and the vocabulary, all the vocabulary that you mentioned. But we can start branching out into other things by the end exposures.
So what I really like to do with the quick checks, and this is kind of like the Matthew way of using the teacher's guides.
Strap in, everybody. The Matthew method.
The Matthew method. So I like to look at what those questions actually relate to in terms of the learning objectives. And so I think, and definitely even for myself when I started using them, and for many teachers, I think it's really easy to gloss over the learning objectives and just go, oh, here's the quick checks. But as the teacher, I think it's really, I wouldn't say necessary, but I think it's important to kind of know what you're actually doing with those quick checks. Because it can be very straightforward to just go, oh, yeah, they can answer the question that I've asked in this quick check. They're meeting the target. What's the target? I don't know. So I would say here, like if we're looking at it in terms of the early exposures, which one do I see? You're probably looking at that like constructing meaning, right? Like listen to identify the phrase, what do I see? And then in the middle exposure, you're still like going like, do students understand the question? Which one do I see? So like, if you're just looking at that at a glance, you can be like, isn't that the same as the early exposure? But actually what you're doing there is determining meaning, getting them to recognize the actual meaning of which one do I see, rather than just like, oh, I can hear this jumble of words together and recognize like the broad sort of context of it.
Goodbye, my friends, goodbye. I'm sad to say goodbye. It was a good day, but now I will say goodbye, my friends, goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.